Thanks for still being there. Ethelbert Okere, former member editorial board of the This Day newspapers, joins us now on Newspaper Review. Thank you very much for being here, Ethelbert.
Yeah, good morning.
Yeah,
Let's
good morning to you.
Let's start off with the Daily Sun, top there, on the top right corner of the paper. You find this headline: How Dogara Lasoon padded budget with 284 billion naira. That's coming from the sacked chairman of the Committee on Appropriations, Abdulmumin Jubrin. The story is on page 9 of the paper. But the lead headline on the front page of the Daily Sun this Monday: President opens up on 1985 coup. Buhari, IBB toppled me to escape probe. My report indicted Gusau, he also reveals. All the details on page 6 of the paper. Ethelbert, you want to quickly comment on this?
Well, I don't know. You see, the president likes talking about probes, but I don't know why he's bringing it up now. Maybe that time he wasn't doing the proper thing, follow rule of law. But I think he has nothing to fear now. They won't remove him this time around. Because I believe Nigerians are behind him. Provided, of course, he follows the rule of law. That time there was no rule of law. Now there's rule of law. He has nothing to fear. They won't topple him again.
And this is part of Nigeria's history that a whole lot of people would also be interested in finding out.
But it goes to say that this corruption thing, didn't start today. And if you juxtapose this story or this report with what is going on today among the top military people, you begin to realize that it is no longer true that the military people were after saints and the civilians or politicians were not. So you go back to why did they topple the civilian government of
1984,
1983, yes.
83. So that's questions that the president too
yes.
Interesting. I also read the reports, the interview by IBB granted some months ago, and he said there was nothing like a memo. The memo that Buhari is talking about that led to his being toppled, which was supposed to be submitted before the Army Council. There was no such memo. That he also gave his own reasons for toppling the administration at the time. But interesting read indeed. Other headlines you find on the front page here: We'll declare Niger Delta Republic August 1. That's coming from militants. Niger Delta Republic will be declared on August 1.
Just next week. Let's watch and see. We are waiting. Well, yeah.
I'm not on the run, Maina. He's speaking here on page 3 is where you find now. Jonathan, Father Mbaka breaks silence. My prediction on ex-president's fall inspired by God, says Catholic priest. Everything on page 8. Of course, I know a whole lot of people still remember this man and his predictions. Controversial priest, you say.
All right, let's quickly look through the front page of the People's Daily. The People's Daily, starting from the top of the paper, and also the major headline here: State speakers read Riot Act to governors. State speakers read Riot Act, and that story is continued on page 5. It has as its kicker, one against meddling in constitutional duties. Now, would you say that the state's speakers have woken up to their responsibilities?
Yes, the states, let's pray. Let's pray for them, please. Let them wake up and liberate the states, from the empiric tendencies of the governors. Because in most states, the governors have made the legislators part of their executive, and so it's a good story. It's heartwarming. Let's see how it goes. I hope they have the guts to do it.
We hope they have the guts to do it. Find details on page 5 of the People's Daily. Now in the news, on page 3, you'll find why I chained my 9-year-old son for weeks, Pastor. And you're wondering why? That story has been in the news. You want to follow up, pick up People's Daily newspaper, and you'll find details.
When he has power to...
FIFA President Infantino arrives Nigeria on football matters. Details are on page 41, and it's also the picture story on the front page of the People's Daily. Now, Shite raises alarm over health of detained leader Zakzaki. Details are on page 2. Why businessmen were not part of Buhari economic team. Find details also on page 5.
All right, let's move over to the front page of the Daily Trust. Now you find this headline from the top of the paper: Zamfara lawmakers arrest call to anarchy. That's according to speakers. Of course, that flows from the main headline on the front page of the Nigerian Pilot there. Of course, just last week, you heard that some members in the Zamfara State House of Assembly were threatened with arrest, and some were actually arrested and detained by the DSS and the police there for making moves to impeach the governor. Well, more details on page 8 and the Daily Trust this Monday. Recession, inflation, forex may define MPC meeting today. That comes to you on page 15 of the paper, but the lead headline on the front page of Daily Trust: unpaid bridging claims threaten fuel supply. It's a front page story, continues on page 5 of the Daily Trust.
All right, let's quickly look at the Authority newspaper. Authority newspaper is leading with economic crunch. Experts explain free fall of the naira. As the kicker to that story says, CBN floating policy won't work. Canvas focus on non-oil sector. And above the masthead of the paper, I have no regrets predicting Buhari's victory, Father Mbaka. PDP wins Kogi is senatorial seat. Imo inconclusive. And of course, still the story of FIFA president in Nigeria. Why Babangida overthrew me, Buhari is saying on the front page. It's continued on page 4.
All right, let's run through the front page of the New Telegraph now. From the top there, Dangote refinery alters lending dynamics. It's a front page story, continues on page 2 of the paper. And some news coming from Lagos, still in the business scene. Lagos targets 1 trillion naira budget, 50 billion naira monthly IGR. That's on page 38 of the paper. Now the lead headline there: kerosene hits all-time high as 30 million households lament. Nigerians turn to firewood, charcoal, sawdust. Marketers halt products importation. All the details to these stories on page 2 of the paper. At the bottom there, Bode George Secondus Dokpasi battle for PDP chair. Daniel 2, INEC declares Imo rerun inconclusive. Quick one from you, Ethelbert, on this.
On Imo rerun or PDP?
PDP national leadership.
Oh, that's good. It means it gives hope to the teaming supporters that the people are still interested in restructuring or reviving the party democratically. Because if you have up to 4 people here now who are running for the chairmanship of the party, it means democracy is going on, it's still going on. So there's hope for the party.
And the personalities involved.
Yes, the personalities involved is most important. You have people like your chairman, Bupesi, somebody who is acceptable across the country. So I believe, and you have Bode George.
Bode George, Secondus.
I think the personalities it makes a statement that there's still hope for the party. Let's see what they will do. Because up to now, Nigerians are still wondering why the party has not been able to find its feet to play the role it's supposed to play.
As an opposition.
So I think Nigerians will be happy to see the party revived, especially as they are going for this convention.
Interesting.
All right, let's quickly look now at the Nigerian pilot. The Nigerian pilot is leading with alleged fraudulent practices. NCC comes hard on MTN, Airtel, Etisalat, and Glo. The writer to that story dupes Nigerians via unsolicited SMS, ringtones, drop calls, and fake promos. All right, Nigerians have been saying this for the longest time. NCCs finally seem to be waking up to this responsibility. Immediately under the masthead of the paper, NDIC calls for stiffer penalties against non-performing loans. Let's look down the front page. 40 billion naira budget padding. EFCC to quiz Dogara. Orders and quite a number of story in the news. Nigeria to host African Central Bank governors. Groups call on for reversal of Kaduna Kano Disco's privatization. Nigeria can be restructured without war. Stocks remain dampened 4th straight week.
All right, those are some of the dailies we have for you here in Abuja. Thank you so much, Ethelbert, for being here as usual. Let's join Kolio Modu in the Lagos Center for more. Stay with us.
But About 5 papers for review from this end. We'll begin with the Guardian newspaper, leading with low prices threaten $20 billion local oil and gas investments. And then you have a picture story making the front page of the Guardian this morning. And I will look further down. Beside that picture story, we have these major headline stories. Experts list causes of sudden death in Nigeria. 15% vote for health sector not feasible in 2017. Then below that picture story making the front page of the Guardian, we've got other major headline stories. A Caribou of Remo Land dies at AIT. Police detectives hunt for financiers of Bola Ige's assassination. Why my regime was toppled 1985 by Buhari. Publish my frozen accounts, the suitcase statements, Fayoshe tells EFCC, with the rider, Ekiti APC Guba aspirant faults governor style. And then we'll leave the Guardian there and move on to the Vanguard newspaper, the second paper for review from this end. And the Vanguard has this as its leading story. Why IBB Gusau overthrew me in 1985. That's an account given by the President Buhari himself. And then with the rider says he wanted to punish Gusau for alleged 100,000 import license scam. Challenges due to tell Nigerians why they moved against him. And then below that major headline story, we have a picture story here this morning, making the front page of the Vanguard. Here we have the newly ordained Archbishop of the Ecclesiastical Province of Lagos, the Most Reverend Michael Fakpe, his wife, during the consecration of 3 bishops and 1 archbishop held at Archbishop Vining Memorial Cathedral Church, GRA Ikeja, Lagos, and that happened yesterday. Just by the side of that picture story, anxiety in Shagamu over Monarch's death. You have that on page 11. Buhari pushing Ndigbo hard to leave Nigeria. And that statement is credited to Ezife. You can check out details of that on page 28, and it's also continued on page 43 of the paper. Then further down the paper, below the picture story, we've got these headline stories. NDCC list Abia, Ondo stakeholders kick, reject nominees. You have that on page 11. Bola Ige, police move to unravel financiers. You have that on page 9 of the paper. Then quickly, let's go above the masthead of the Vanguard newspaper. We've got these major headline stories. We get Forex 3 months after bidding. That's credited to the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, MAN. Investors overreaction to Forex policy cost them 749 billion naira. Okay, that's about all we have making the front page of the Vanguard this morning. So we move on now away from the Vanguard to the Punch newspaper. And the Punch has this as its leading story. Certificate forgery, 9 Ekiti Assembly members to face trial. With the riders, federal government to reopen Omojola, Fasuba, Daramola's murder cases. Details of that you can find on page 7 of the Punch newspaper this morning. And then below that major headline story, we have a picture story. There we have the FIFA president, Mr. Gianni Infantino, with President Nigeria Football Federation, Mr. Amaju Pinnick, during Infantino's visit to Abuja. That happened on Sunday. Okay? By the side of that major headline story, we have other ones. Police arrest pastor who starved, chained son for deliverance. Details on page 4, and that story also continues on page 5 of the paper. I almost died as Super Eagles coach, says Olise, 74. Adeosun meets World Bank Wednesday on borrowing plans. That details you can find on page 40 of the paper. Then let's go above the masthead of the Punch newspaper. Just beside that masthead, we have this one. Interest on loot recovered from ex-IG. Alarms hits 1.9 billion, and that's created from EFCC. With the rider, Commission received Jonathan's permission to spend 163 million naira. Story on page 7. Budget padding. Serap asks EFCC to probe Dogara others. Story on page 10 of the paper. And then the last paper for review from the Lagos end, that's the Nigerian, the Nation newspaper, with the headline story, Reps step up dirty fight over budget 2016 scandal. That's exactly how the Nation puts its headline story this morning, with the rider members revolt forced Jibrin sack, lawmaker indicts House leadership. And then below that, we have a picture story. Here we have faces of some members of the House, Jibril, Dugara, Lasu, Ogo, Dogua, on the budget padding accusation there. And quickly, let's go above the masthead of the Nation and take some of the headline stories there. Lagos State targets 50 billion IJR, 1 trillion naira budget by 2018. Story on page 10. Police arrest pastor who changed son for weeks. Details of that you can have on page 10 of the paper. Of course, there are several other headline stories making the front page of the papers, which we will not be able to bring to you this morning. But do pick up these papers and read up some of these interesting stories for you this Monday morning. And we hand you back to Abuja now for more on Kakaki, the African Voice. Please don't go anywhere. My name is Nkoli Omaudu.